What if the very season that feels like nothing is moving is actually the season God is moving everything into place for you? You've been waiting, you've been praying, you've been trusting, and some days it feels like the silence is louder than any answer you've ever received. You look around and you see people advancing, people getting what they asked for, relationships blooming, opportunities opening, and you're standing there wondering, God, did you forget about me? You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't miss your moment. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not less than. You are chosen. And chosen people go through seasons that ordinary people never have to face because chosen people are being prepared for things that ordinary people will never carry. This channel exists for you, for the one who feels different, for the one who feels set apart, for the one who has been called to something deeper, something higher, something that doesn't even have a name yet, but you feel it in your chest every single morning when you wake up. You are seen, you are known, you are chosen. If you've never been here before, welcome home. Subscribe right now and type I receive in the comments to activate what God has already written over your life. This is not coincidence. You were led here, and today everything begins to shift. Stay with me. Every word of this message was prepared specifically for you. The moment you stopped forcing it. There was a moment, maybe you remember it clearly, maybe it came quietly without announcement, when you finally got tired. Not tired of God, not tired of faith, but tired of forcing. Tired of pushing doors that wouldn't open. Tired of making yourself smaller to fit into spaces that were never designed for you. Tired of bending, adjusting, performing, trying, and still feeling like you were running in place on a road that led nowhere. You prayed harder, you fasted, you quoted scriptures over your situation, you did everything right, and still silence. Still waiting. Still the same walls around the same life in the same place. And in that moment of exhaustion, something happened that you didn't expect. You let go, not because you gave up on God, but because you were finally humble enough to admit that your timing was never God's timing. Your plan was never God's blueprint. Your forcing was actually blocking the very thing God was trying to deliver to you because you kept trying to carry what He told you to trust. Listen to me carefully. When God makes a promise over your life, He doesn't need your help fulfilling it. He doesn't need you to manipulate the situation. He doesn't need you to convince the person. He doesn't need you to engineer the opportunity. He doesn't need you to force the door open. He already holds the key. The moment you stopped forcing it, something shifted in the atmosphere around your life. Maybe you didn't see it right away. Maybe it looked like loss. Maybe it looked like delay. Maybe it looked like God had gone quiet. But God was never quiet. God was working. He was repositioning. He was removing what wasn't aligned. He was clearing the path that your forcing had been cluttering. He was preparing you, not just the destination, you, for what was coming. Type, He is working. In the comments right now, if you know deep in your spirit that God has never stopped moving on your behalf, even when you couldn't see it, even when every external sign said otherwise, because this is where the chosen one's story always begins. Not in the highlight, not in the triumph, but in the moment of release. The moment you stopped forcing. The moment you said, God, I trust you more than I trust my own understanding. That moment was not weakness. That moment was the most powerful thing you ever did. Why God makes you wait. Nobody talks about this, and it's time somebody did. The waiting is not punishment. The waiting is not abandonment. The waiting is not God being slow or distant or indifferent to your pain. The waiting is preparation. But here's the thing about preparation that nobody wants to say out loud. Preparation is uncomfortable. Preparation stretches you. Preparation requires you to become something you are not yet. And you cannot rush that process without damaging the very thing being built. Think about it this way. A surgeon doesn't rush because the patient is impatient. An architect doesn't cut corners because the future resident is tired of waiting. A diamond doesn't form in a day. It forms under pressure, over time. in conditions that feel impossible to survive. And yet, the diamond emerges. You are the diamond. God is not withholding from you. God is crafting you. And what he is crafting in you during this waiting season is something that cannot be downloaded, cannot be fast-tracked, cannot be purchased, and cannot be borrowed from someone else's journey. It is yours alone, forged in your specific fire, shaped by your specific silence, grown through your specific struggle. The reason God makes you wait is because what he has prepared for you requires a version of you that doesn't exist yet. And every day of waiting is a day of becoming. Every prayer in the dark is a brick in the foundation. Every tear you surrendered to him in the middle of the night was not wasted, it was consecrated. Right. I am being prepared. Write now in the comments if you accept this truth into your spirit. Declare it over yourself. Your waiting is not wasted. Your waiting is sacred. Because chosen people don't just receive the promise, they are transformed by the journey toward it. And that transformation is the point. That transformation is what makes you able to steward what God is bringing. If he gave it to you right now, before the preparation was complete, you would not be ready to carry it. Not because you are not enough, but because the weight of the blessing requires the strength that only the waiting builds. God knows what he's doing. He has always known what he's doing. And he has never, not once, forgotten your name. The lie. The enemy wants you to believe. Now I need you to lean in close because what I'm about to tell you is the thing the enemy does not want you to understand. There is a lie circulating in your mind right now. Maybe it sounds like this: it's too late for me. Or maybe it sounds like God must have changed his mind. Or maybe it sounds like the quietest, most dangerous version of all. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was never really chosen. That lie did not come from God. That lie came from the one who has been watching your journey and is terrified of where it's going. The enemy doesn't attack average. The enemy doesn't invest strategy into ordinary. The enemy doesn't spend his time and resources confusing people who were never going to make an impact. He attacks the chosen. He targets the called. He specifically designs his most sophisticated weapons for the ones that God has marked for greatness, because he knows what you are capable of. He has seen the promise. He has seen your assignment, and he is desperate to convince you to walk away before you step into it. Every lie you have believed about yourself, every whisper that said you were too broken, too late, too far gone, too ordinary, too forgotten, every moment you questioned whether God truly spoke to you, every time you almost gave up, that was the enemy working overtime because he is afraid of what happens when you fully step into who God made you to be. Type ECU 777 in the comments right now to break every seal the enemy has placed over your mind. Type it and mean it. Type it as a declaration. Type it as warfare. Because you are not fighting against flesh and blood. You are fighting for the destiny written over your life before you were born. God did not change his mind. His gifts and his callings are irrevocable. His word does not return to him void. What he promised you in your secret place, in that moment when it was just you and him, that promise is still standing. It has never expired. It has never been revoked. It is waiting for the exact moment God has ordained for its fulfillment. And that moment is closer than it has ever been. What "don't force it" really means. When God says don't force it, he is not saying be passive. He is not saying sit down, stop praying, stop moving, stop showing up. He is not telling you to become inactive and call it faith. What he is saying is far more precise, far more powerful, or far more liberating. He is saying, stop trying to make happen what only I can orchestrate. There is a difference between partnership and control. There is a difference between faithfully walking in the direction God points and desperately trying to manufacture the outcome yourself. And chosen ones, people like you, often have such a strong sense of their calling that they fall into the trap of trying to force the calling into existence rather than trusting the one who called them. You can feel the promise so clearly. You can see it, you can taste it, and that intensity, that burning certainty, can become the very thing that makes you impatient. That makes you try to push the timeline. That makes you reach for the fruit before it's ripe. Don't force the relationship. Let God bring the right person. Don't force the opportunity. Let God open the right door. Don't force the platform. Let God build the right audience. Don't force the healing. Let God do the deep work at the root. Because anything you force open before God's timing will break in your hands. But what God opens, no man can shut. What God establishes, no storm can destroy. What God brings to you in His perfect timing, it will not only arrive, it will remain. Type, I release control in the comments. Say it out loud. Let it become your prayer right now. Because releasing control is not giving up on the promise. It is finally trusting the promise maker completely. This is what separates people who receive their breakthrough from people who stay perpetually on the edge of it. Not talent, not intelligence, not how loud they pray or how long they fast, but whether they have learned the sacred art of trusting God completely, releasing the outcome into His hands while continuing to move faithfully in the direction He points. That is the path, that is the walk, and you are already on it. Signs God is still working in your silence. Sometimes the most important question isn't, is God going to fulfill His promise? Because the answer to that is always yes. The most important question is, can I recognize what God is doing when it doesn't look the way I expected? Because here's what nobody prepares you for. God's process rarely looks the way you imagined it would. You expected the door to open, and instead something closed. You expected the confirmation, and instead you got silence. You expected acceleration, and instead things slowed down. And in that dissonance between what you expected and what you experienced, doubt entered the room. But what if I told you that every single thing that confused you was actually a sign that God was actively at work? The closing of doors, that was God's protection. He saw what was behind that door that you couldn't see from where you were standing, and He closed it before you walked into something that would have cost you far more than you were prepared to pay. The silence, that was God asking you to go deeper, asking you to trust not just when you hear His voice, but in the space between the words, asking you to develop a faith that doesn't require constant reassurance. The slowing down, that was God ordering your steps, not stopping your journey, ordering your steps, positioning you precisely, moving people and circumstances into alignment so that when you arrive at the appointed moment, everything is ready. Right. I see it now. In the comments, if your eyes are opening to what God has actually been doing in your life, if you can look back on a door that closed and feel gratitude now instead of grief, if you can look at the silence and feel peace instead of panic, God is working in your silence. God is working in your confusion. God is working in the very season that looks like nothing is happening. Because with God, the invisible work always precedes the visible breakthrough. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are not behind. You're in the hands of a God who has never once dropped what He was holding, what the chosen one carries. You have always felt different, and if you're honest, that difference has been both your greatest gift and your deepest wound. The sensitivity that allows you to feel God's presence so profoundly is the same sensitivity that makes ordinary cruelty feel unbearable. The vision that God placed in you, that ability to see what doesn't exist yet, is the same vision that makes it painful to live in what currently is. The depth of your love is the same depth that made your betrayals cut so much deeper than other people seem to understand. You are not too sensitive. You are not too intense. You are not too much. You are calibrated for a calling that requires exactly who you are. Every part of you, the parts you celebrate and the parts you have tried to hide, has been seen, known, and chosen. But carrying a chosen calling is not glamorous. Nobody tells you about the nights when you questioned everything. Nobody frames the isolation as part of the design. Nobody hands you a manual that explains why the chosen path is so often the lonelier one, why the people who were supposed to stay sometimes leave, why the gifts that were meant to be your greatest tools sometimes feel like your heaviest burdens. I want you to hear this and receive it into the deepest place in your spirit. The weight you carry is not a sign that God made a mistake. The weight you carry is the very evidence that what God placed in you is real, significant, and worth the preparation. Type, "I was made for this," in the comments. Say it like you mean it. Say it like the declaration of a chosen one who is finally done apologizing for the size of their calling. Because the world needs what God placed in you, not a diluted version of it, not the version you perform for people who don't understand you. The full, unfiltered, God-breathed version of you, healed, whole, and walking in the full authority of your assignment. That version of you is coming, and it is arriving right on time. Don't force it. He promised. It's already done. I want to close this message with something that I need you to carry with you from this moment forward, not just as information, not just as inspiration, but as a living truth that you anchor your entire life to. God does not make promises he cannot keep. Every word he has ever spoken over your life is backed by an authority that transcends time, circumstance, human opinion, and every single obstacle that has ever stood between you and your destiny. When God says it, it is already done in the spiritual realm. The only journey is from the spiritual into the natural, from the invisible into the visible, from the promise into the manifestation. And that journey, that gap between the word and the fulfillment, is exactly where you are standing right now. You are not outside the promise. You are inside the process. So don't force the relationship into existence. Let God bring the one he designed for your assignment. Don't force the platform. Let God build the audience that was always meant to receive what you carry. Don't force the healing. Let God go to the root, because surface healing will not hold the weight of where you're going. Don't force the timing. Let God be God, because his timing is not slow. It is perfect. Your assignment is not to make it happen. Your assignment is to remain faithful, remain available, remain in the presence of God, and trust that what he promised, he is already bringing to pass in ways your eyes haven't been able to see yet. Right. It is already done. In the comments right now, declare it as a chosen one. Declare it as someone who has decided, once and for all, that God's word over their life is more real than any delay, any silence, any confusion, any pain, any person who doubted you, and any moment you almost gave up. Because you are still here. After everything, you are still here, still breathing, still believing, still standing on the promise. That is not coincidence. That is covenant. God chose you before you knew how to choose him back. He wrote your name before he formed the earth. He designed your assignment before he wove you together in your mother's womb. And everything that has happened, everything you've survived, everything you've lost, everything you've wept over in the silence, has been working together for a purpose so magnificent that when you finally see it in full, every moment of waiting will make complete and perfect sense. Don't force it. Trust him. He promised. And what God promises, he delivers. Welcome to the next chapter of your story, Chosen One. It starts right now.